Also, did you request time off? We're just doing whatever we want here at Middleish, Just taking vacation time whenever we want. Is that what we're doing?
Well, yeah, I thought I was like a co-CEO. Co-CEO. Is that a title?
It is now.
Co-CEO.
Co-CEO. We're co-CEOs.
I mean, when you think about Middleish, do you think that you have a boss?
No.
Yeah, see, exactly. We're on the
I'm
same
the
page
boss.
then. Because I'm the boss. I win.
Obviously.
Hello, and welcome to Middleish, the podcast about moderation in all things. I am Erin Green.
I am Michael Gray.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. We have
Good.
blue sky today.
Do you?
I know we talk about the weather like every time we get on here because that's kind of
Because we're old.
what I know. It's like what I have outside my window right now, but blue sky and sunshine, which is, we just haven't had that in Boise because we've had an
Heck
inversion, which people call it Lake Boise. When you get up to the ski mountain on Bogus and you look down into the valley, it's just this like this blanket of clouds. So when you're down here in town, it's gray and overcast and just icky and kind of, it just feels like very oppressive, and the air sometimes stinks. And then you get up above the clouds and it's this like gorgeous bluebird, sky.
Yeah.
And today somehow the clouds got moved out, even though they keep talking about the inversion on the news. I'm like, I'm fine if the weather man is wrong
about
in
that.
in this direction. But
yeah, so I grew up an hour west of Boise, and I mean we'd get stuck in those inversions too, like 60 miles away, and man, they just suck.
Yeah,
like they do feel oppressive. They're just like heavy and dark, and it's like I haven't seen the sun for 2 weeks, and
I know
this air smells stale.
Some people will just drive partway up the ski mountain until they're out of the clouds and just sit with lawn chairs sometimes and just like hang out
for sure.
to get out of the clouds.
Well, we're chilly and rainy and overcast here. We had a cold front move in, and it's just been raining, and haven't seen the sun for a few days. It's kind of gloomy and gross. But
I'm finally at the timeline where I can say I'll be in Mexico next week. And so I can handle just about any weather pattern that comes at me right now. So I've just got this vision in my head of sandy beaches and, warm breeze and sunshine. So can't wait.
That's great for you, Erin. We're all super excited for you.
I can tell.
I can tell. That's awesome. That's super exciting, actually.
In fairness,
jealous in the best way.
I have had to cancel 3 trips. Yeah. I mean, I've earned this. This is a long time in the making. So
I've earned this.
It is going to be fun. It's going to be great.
Yeah. So today, this is our first episode. We can't wait
to talk about this.
Yeah. Okay. So we're excited because of our topic, and we're also excited because this is the beginning of our kind of new format of Middleish, right? Of how we're going to do things. As far as like when we'll release episodes, what will come for the rest of the month. We've talked about this a few times in previous episodes, and this is the beginning of something new, and we're pretty excited about that. Here we go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yay. And we are going to rely on all of you to tell us if you like it or not, because this was the brainchild of Michael and I just kind of talking about, hey, it's been almost 2 years, how are things going? Should we try some different things? And what this really comes down to is, we think sometimes the hour-long episode can be a little bit of a barrier for people. Like people don't have the time to get through the whole thing. And, gosh, how many hour-long podcasts do you subscribe to? Do you have the time to listen to all of it?
Right.
And we've also been thinking, is there a way we can bring more actionable items to people's lives? So not just the discussion and then we move on to the next thing. How can we actually kind of stick with a topic for the month and provide like, okay, we talked about this thing the first week. Here's another look at it, or here's some suggested things you can try in your life to, kind of follow along this topic.
Right.
So,
right. Like, little exercises or thought experiments or just places to be aware of things and kind of see how you respond, some real practical stuff just to help, like Aaron said, just help reinforce what we talk about on the podcast. And I think we said this last time, but like, I don't really have any issue with the way we were doing it. I think it was exactly what we wanted to do, but there are some of these topics that, we release on a Monday, and by the next Monday, we've got a totally new, different topic out. And, a lot of this is like, what if we sit with some of these topics for a month and we do some work to reinforce some of these ideas and strategies and different perspectives, and we spend some time really just digging into some of these things so that we can maybe actually begin to make some practical changes into how we do things, how we, pursue health or seek health or how we view it, just all that kind of stuff. So we're really excited about this. I think it's going to be, fun. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be like more helpful and have more value, to be honest, than what we were doing. And that's really exciting. So yeah, this is day one of that.
Yeah. So what to expect if you're listening, because I know a lot of our listeners truly just listen to this on a platform, podcast platform. Expect the hour-long episode at the top of the month. So the first Monday of the month, we're going to release the hour-long episode talking about whatever that topic is. And then the next week, we're going to focus more on social media work. So we're going to have some reels and some different things on social media, some actionable kinds of things. And so check us out there. There won't be, I'm not going to say there'll never be any kind of an, audio upload to the podcast platform that second or the fourth week, but there could be. We'll see how this unfolds. The third week, so second week, social media, third week is going to be an Instagram live. And we do plan to record that and put that up on YouTube and Anchor. So our audio listening platform. So that will be short, 10 to 15 minutes, but it's the idea of that one is often we'll get some, feedback from listeners or questions. And of course we want it to be live with you. And so we want you to join in and ask us questions, or at least say hi. Just let us know that you're there. And we haven't figured out the time for that, have we, Michael? So we can't really tell our listeners, hey, we'll be live. At this time.
We'll figure that out soon.
Yeah, we'll get that to you. Don't worry.
We'll be promoing it. Yeah. So Middleish _podcast on Instagram. Like that's where the bulk of stuff's going to be happening. That's where the party's going to be. So be sure and follow us there, because that's where that's where we're going to be doing these lives. We're going to be doing reels. We're going to be doing these kind of exercises and experiments and things to kind of play around with and try out in your life. That's what we'll be doing all this. The full episode at the top of the month, the live audio like Aaron's talking about on the third week, those will be on, like she said, YouTube and Anchor and Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts and all that stuff. But there will be a lot of the value and interaction and stuff will be on our Instagram. So be sure and give us a follow there, Middleish _podcast on Instagram.
Yes. And let us know what you think. We want to hear any and all feedback. So if you love the new format or you have a request, let us know. If you really miss the standard, like hour-long podcast a week, please go back to that. Let us know. Because this is kind of a monthly endeavor, I would picture us doing this for a number of months, 6 or more, and just seeing what the reception is. And we need to hear from all of you if you like it or not. So
yes,
reach out.
Here we go. All right.
Okay.
Shall we do this thing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to introduce the topic?
You're not wearing a hat. Michael swore he needs to wear a hat for this one.
That's right.
Because this is one of those, Michael has a switch when he starts to get close to a rant where he takes the hat and he kind of like, and like fixes it. And then he's like, okay, I got to gather myself. And here we go. When it's time for the release.
What's funny about that is probably, I bet no one's ever seen that because it, Zoom records who's speaking. And I'm always doing that when you're talking and I'm like getting ready. So I don't know that people have ever seen that. It's my tell.
It is. Yeah. You cannot
Yeah.
play poker
So
if we're talking about, diet mentality or
yeah.
diarrhea tea or keto, whatever. I mean, there's no way you'd win a
Or
poker match
goop.
if we're somebody just brings up Gwyneth Paltrow and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't have a hat on. I guess we'll see what happens. Huh.
Today,
One
we're
way to
talking
find
about
out.
diet culture.
Diet
This is something
culture.
we have talked about, I would say, loosely before, and we've
Mhm.
presented this concept before through a ton of different episodes. Basically, anytime we talk about how society sets us up to expect to be thinner and to achieve everything we want to achieve if we're in a smaller body, and that weight loss is the only goal, health doesn't have anything to do with it, all of those kinds of things,
Mhm.
we reference diet culture because that's exactly what's at the heart of all of
Right.
those concepts. So we're going to dig into that today.
Yeah. We're going to dive right in. And so, like Erin said, we've talked about this a lot. It's kind of made appearances in a lot of different episodes. We've kind of referenced it, but we did feel like just a really good deep dive into what exactly is it? Like, how do we define it? How do we, help kind of see how it's really pervasive. It's kind of everywhere. It's in the way we talk. It's in kids programming. It's in commercials. I mean, it's all over the place. And it's one of those things for me, at least my experience with it has been like, once I see it, like I can't not see
Yeah.
it. It's just like, oh, it's there. And oh, it's there. And oh, it's in that saying that I've said to my kids for 10 years. Like, oh crap, and
Yes.
it's just everywhere. And so how do we begin to recognize it? And then what do we do with that? What do we do with being aware of what it is and recognizing it? And like, how do we handle that personally? So we're just going to kind of take a deep dive. And I think this is the perfect topic for beginning kind of this new format because we're
Mm-hmm.
super excited about some of like the, what are we calling them? Like the exercises and stuff that we're going to do. I think this is going to be really good. So
Mm-hmm.
should we start off with just kind of getting a definition?
Sure.
Should we start there?
Well,
So,
I
I
have a
mean,
couple
Erin
of
already gave one.
statistics real
Okay.
quick. I wanted to just share. This is why, one of the reasons why we're talking about this is because
Mhm.
an estimated 45 million Americans are going to engage in a diet this year and spending 33 billion every year on weight loss products. I mean, we've talked about this before, that the weight loss industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So the marketing is huge. The emotional impressions it leaves on society are huge. The messaging that you need this in your life is huge. And just another quick statistic from one of the books that I've read, Just Eat It. It's by a dietitian named Laura Thomas in the UK. She cites a study that showed 48% of people in the UK tried to lose weight between 2015 and 2016. And if you're only looking at women, the percentage rose to 57%. And that people started talking to their children about weight loss by age 2, or mentioning it to their children by age 2.
Yeah.
Damn.
I
So,
mean, they can't even comprehend what that is at age
but
2.
it's there. You plant the
Yeah.
seed at such a young age. And it could be something as simple as like just saying that you're on a diet in front of
Mm-hmm.
your child, or
Mm-hmm.
talking to your child about someone who you see as fat and saying
Mm-hmm.
something about them, or saying something about the calories in ice cream. Like it's
Yeah,
so
I've got to get to the
sneaky.
gym.
So
I'm getting fat, or don't
yeah.
eat that. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. So your
So,
definitions are good here.
okay. So first of all, like those numbers are staggering and should be shocking. And I hope everybody's upset at this point. Let's start off the
Everyone put your
podcast
hat
being
on.
mad. Everybody feeling upset? All right, here we go. So this is a definition I found from choosingtherapy.com, and I like it. So it says this: diet culture refers to a rigid set of expectations about valuing thinness and attractiveness over physical health and emotional well-being. Diet culture often emphasizes good versus bad foods, focuses on calorie restriction, and normalizes self-deprecating talk. So let's pick that apart a little bit. Okay. So first off, refers to a rigid set of expectations about valuing thinness and attractiveness over physical health and emotional well-being. So we've talked about like rigid expectations and rules and process before, right? Like when things are very strict and there's no wiggle room, our chances of screwing it up, quote unquote, screwing it up, like
Sure.
are real high, right? Because there's no room for error. And then we approach these rigid things with this all or none mentality. So not only is it very rigid and very specific with how we can make progress and how we can measure progress, but there's no room for error. So when there is error in this very strict like way forward, we burn it all down, because what's the point? I messed it up once. And if I mess it up once, obviously I'm doing everything wrong. And then not only that, but it's this conflation of weight loss and being smaller with being healthier. And this was something I feel like I should have seen a lot earlier in my career, but I just didn't for whatever reason. And it's this idea that losing weight is inherently healthy, right? Like that's, in fact, I would even say that for most of us, I think like these two concepts have been so blurred and woven together that when we talk about being healthier, we assume that includes losing weight. Like that's just part of the being healthier, no matter where you are, no matter what the process is. Like you're supposed to lose weight. You should be thinner, even if you're thin. Well, you could be thin. Do you have abs? Because if not, well, then you're not really thin enough. Like you could be quote unquote healthier. And so that's kind of the basis of this. And then how we approach that, you know, when we talk about good and bad foods, we like place morality on foods. There's foods you should feel good about eating and foods you should feel terrible about eating. Obviously, you need to eat less. And then the whole process, the whole way that you keep yourself focused is you just beat the shit out of yourself. You know, we use guilt and shame to keep you on track. And that's something that I'll be done in a minute. Sorry, I'm kind of going a long time here. One more thing.
This is great.
But is that I think that guilt and shame are real foundational to diet culture. I think they are like, just foundational. And so I like this definition of the two from Brene Brown. And that's that guilt is I did something bad and shame is I am bad. And I think we use those two within diet culture all the time to presumably help us like stick to it, right? And so I see guilt as like when you go bowling and you have the bumper lanes, you know, guilt is like what we use to keep us on track. It's like if I feel guilty about something, then that was wrong. And obviously I need to head the other direction. I think that's why we often wind up in these all or none kind of swings. And then the shame, we use that for motivation, right? Like I'm a piece of crap, I'm unhealthy, I'm this, I'm that, I'm no good. And I have to change my life if I'm going to have any, value or worth or whatever. And then that's our motivation. And so it's like, we're using like shame as gas and guilt as a steering wheel. And we're just screwed from the start. I mean, we start our process of quote unquote getting healthier from just this corrupt foundation. And to me, that kind of encompasses diet culture.
Yep. Very good. Very good overview of it. And I will say that another point that I've heard often made that wraps up everything you just said is that diet culture basically teaches us that we're not good enough as we are. Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right that guilt and shame is a huge piece of the messaging. It's like the foundation of diet culture. It's diet culture's breath. Like it's the way diet culture stays alive. I will also offer that there is a lot of sneaky BS going on in diet culture when it comes to just really precipitating those beliefs around bigger bodies, around certain types of food, certain types of exercise habits, your ability to do certain things, how we look, what our appearance means to other people. Diet culture can disguise itself in like wellness industry sorts of things, or this is a lifestyle, but pay attention to commercials. I mean, magazine ads, if you ever read magazines anymore, but social media messaging, different ways that diet culture still shows up, even though it's veiled as oh, we want you to be stronger. We want you to be healthy. We want you to do this for you. Okay, that's great. We do want you to be healthier for you. Yet we often see these images of bodies depicted that are a certain size or shape. And we, sneakily kind of put in like, oh, this musculature or physique, or, I mean, again, it's very sneaky. And and I understand advertising has this whole level of psychological messaging, and it's trying to move you into action so that you are hit on a subconscious level to buy that product or go engage in that service. But pay attention. We're going to have some tips here later on, but I just want you to like put that in the back of your mind, that sometimes these things that you think are altruistic and they're just trying to help you be healthier, and oh, it's about wellness or lifestyle. Careful, because a lot of that stuff is just diet culture in disguise, and we'll talk a little more about how that happens.
Right. That's a really good point. And to add on to that, just kind of like to add to sort of our foundational understanding of diet culture before we kind of get into some specifics here, I just want to say that I think diet culture typically, I won't say always, but I think typically it lies about physical health, and it completely ignores mental and emotional health. And, we've said this before on the show, that if it's not like mentally and emotionally healthy, then it's not physically healthy. Like if it promotes quote unquote health in some avenues, but unhealth in others, then it's not healthy. Like that's not how healthy works. It's not like you have to, weigh the pros and cons of this and like, oh, it's going to make me better here, but oh, I'm really going to suffer here. That's not how it works. And so diet culture is really good about ignoring the impact that quote unquote getting physically healthy will have on your mental emotional state. And that's not how we get to do this. Like, that's not how this works. We don't get to suffer somewhere with our health so that we can flourish in another place with our health. That's not how health works. So just want to put that in
you
there
can't
too.
Separate and compartmentalize the emotional, mental side of health and wellness and the physical side. And I think that's often probably the first way that you can identify some sneaky diet culture stuff is by evaluating, does this seem like it would be good for my mental health? Does this seem like it preserves my emotional health? Like, what would this look like in other aspects of a fully healthy life and not just physical? And would this be good for my physical health? Do I think that this would actually help my physical health? Because there's a lot of crap in the diet culture world that's not good for you physically. Like if we have this really bizarre and skewed look at weight loss and being thin as a healthy thing. I can't tell you how many times people say, like maybe I'm seeing a client and they talk about how their spouse is so thin. They can eat anything they want. They can do whatever they want. They never gain an ounce. They're so healthy. And I'm like, well, wait a minute though. Is that, we don't know that that's healthy. We don't know that if you can eat whatever you want, I mean, well, you truly can. That's an intuitive eating approach. We've talked about that.
Right.
But if that means that they're just literally not eating the foods that they need to have a healthy body, because we have a lot of scientific evidence to support a certain dietary pattern that helps with health. If it means they're not meeting that, generalized standard 80% of the time or whatever, then maybe they're not healthy just because they're thin. Like, let's just acknowledge that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really something that's sort of a crux of like diet culture, is that assumption that you can gauge someone's health and even how much they care about themselves, right? And their value and their worth strictly by their size. Like you can just look at them and go like, oh, healthy, oh, unhealthy. And we've talked about this before, and we will continue to talk about it. But like someone who is heavier and what we would typically call like overweight, we can determine nothing about their health by looking at their body. Like it doesn't mean anything. There may be some things that are unhealthy for them specifically about having extra weight. Like there are some things that that it can play out that way for sure, but that's very specific to the individual, and you have to know the individual and medical history and all that kind of stuff, like blood panels, and like you can't look at them and say unhealthy, just like you can't look at someone who's super lean and has a body that you would classically say like, wow, this is like the epitome of health, because you know nothing about what's going on internally. They could have terrible cholesterol, right? They could have, I mean, and this is really common. They could have incredibly unhealthy thoughts and beliefs about their body. They could be stuck in very restrictive, disordered eating because they feel like, if I am not this level of lean, then what am I? And that's all I have. And if I lose this, I lose my place, my status, my value, whatever. And that's not healthy. And so we can't really determine anything by the size of someone, but diet culture says you can find out everything you need to know about that person's health by their size.
And we already talked about how it starts so young, but we have a few examples here of just how pervasive it is in our society. And again, it's very sneaky. So I have a couple, but you had some here, a children's book that you've seen or that you own, maybe?
Yeah, that we have. I think it's in the trash now. I might have kept it to like use it for later, but it's certainly not what the girls can get. So we got some like early reader books, like a box of like, I don't know, 20 of them or something. And I did a reel on this maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. So if you want, you can check out my my Instagram and look at it. But I read through the whole book. But it's essentially this cat. So it's, it's short words, short sentences, just very brief little things for kids to begin to identify sounds and that kind of stuff. But it's about this cat who eats a lot of jam and a lot of ham, and he gets fat, right? And so then and he's sad now. And so what the cat does is he runs and runs and runs, and then he's not fat anymore, and now he's happy. That's the book.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it has some questions at the end, and the questions are like, why is the cat happy now? What made the cat so fat? Like, yeah, it's like, holy shit, this is insane.
Well, I hope that they provided some context. Like, the cat was unhappy because it wasn't having its needs met, or it wasn't practicing self-care, or
not at all.
It suffered a loss and then coped in an unhealthy way. Like, can we like,
no,
I mean,
fat is bad. And if you get fat, make sure you get unfat, because that's the only way you'll be happy. There you go, kids. Good luck with life.
Oh my gosh. Think of some of the messaging that kids get at young ages. I think of some of the movies that we see that are geared toward kids. And I mean, the bullies tend to be chubby kids, or, the fat friend is the one who never has a boyfriend, or
who's kind of goofy and silly and not very smart.
And they're portrayed as, and they're portrayed as being like, this sort of the one that you laugh at all the time. They eat certain things, and they're
the running joke.
Yes. And it just, I know movies are full of stereotypes. Like, and I know we've all laughed at it. And I grew up with movies that portray that as well. The reason I'm presenting this is, again, to help people build some awareness around, this is how the story you've created in your mind about thinness and fatness and dieting and weight loss and the foods we eat and the ways we are seen by others. This is how it starts, is by seeing this just every day, kind of pushed into our lives in these ways that are, again, pretty sneaky.
Yeah. I've seen them like in just like programs for my kids. Just even things that talk about like, and I think some of the stuff comes from has good intentions, but it's very misplaced, and that's because diet culture is so pervasive, right? Like, this is just what we do. And so just talking about like good foods and bad foods, and how some foods are bad for you and they'll make you unhealthy, and, that kind of stuff. And so even at a young age, like my Sophie, she's 5, but it's not like we're just now seeing this. Even like 3-4 years old, when she's watching cartoons, talking about this stuff, and after like, let's educate kids about nutrition, but it's really like, nope, good and bad. Like you have to earn the sweets. You have to earn the ice cream. You have to like work for it. because you have to counteract it. And if you don't, well, ooh, maybe you should feel bad about yourself for eating that. And did you eat enough of the good things to feel good about yourself? And
Yeah.
it's just really prevalent. And I do think like a lot of that programming for kids, the intent is, hey, let's teach them about nutrition and let's try to help them have good eating patterns and that kind of stuff. I really think that. I don't think the intent is like, awful, but because our collective starting place around health is so corrupt and corroded and unhealthy that no matter what grows out of it is shit. It just is. When that's our foundation, we're like, okay, we're doing like a farming illustration again. When that's like, when you have like only corrupt, terrible soil, like nothing good's going to grow out of it. It's just not. It's not the way it works.
Well, and it's such a fine line to walk with kids, because I understand why things are simplified into sort of black and white terms, because as a child develops, they have periods of their lives where that's all they can see. That's all they can understand is it's right or wrong. It's black or white. So I do understand that. I think the difference is portraying how you should feel about yourself based on these foods you eat, how your body looks. I've had conversations with a lot of friends of mine that have children in that, age range of like all the way from grade school into adolescence. And we have these conversations about how you talk to your kids around, body size and weight loss or weight gain or certain foods you eat. And the best message I can send is, it's probably like a 3-part suggestion. And one is to include all foods in your home. Everybody eat together, set a positive. We talked about this in our, couple of our kids episodes. Go back and listen to those if you want, because we won't get too far into it, but, set a good positive experience around food in your home, period. And really avoid making comments about how much or how little someone's eating, or the big appetite on this one, or you're a big girl, or you're a good boy for cleaning your plate, that kind of stuff. Secondly, would be avoiding comments around body size in a negative way. God, this is hard for everybody because, again, it's so pervasive. Like, it's just kind of part of how we talk sometimes. Yeah. Try and check yourself, and watch how you talk about other body sizes and make comments about that. And then also just, being very open about how food feels in your tummy. What are your hunger and satiety cues telling you? Is your tummy saying it's still hungry? Oh, this tastes really good. And so sometimes, we do eat past our point of fullness when food tastes really good. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just, oh, this is an observation. So like starting to make those observations with your kids. I bet even your young one, Sophie, can say when her tummy is full, like, or when she's hungry. So
absolutely.
Get your kids in touch with those cues. That's that is honestly, staying in touch with your innate hunger and satiety cues is the number one defense against diet culture. Like really staying in touch with, what is my body telling me? That is, I think, one of the most powerful tools any human has against diet culture.
Yeah. Can you imagine growing up as a kid, like just understanding like what your body's telling to you? Can you imagine having that advantage versus like, nope, ignore it. Like, shut it up. It has nothing of value to tell to you. It's a liar. And you just like, but yeah, I mean, imagine like growing up being like, oh yeah, I know what hunger feels like. I know what fullness feels. I know this stuff. And one thing about like kids and like their nutritional demands, they change a lot. Like when they're growing a lot, like when my kids are growing, holy crap, like it's eating all day long. Like just eating and eating and eating, because like their body's like, yeah, we're growing a human being. Like we're doing a lot of work. We need a lot of fuel. And then when they aren't in a growth spurt, like their appetites, go way down and they don't eat near as much. And that's normal. And if they don't understand like hunger is hunger, and I need to honor my hunger regardless of if it's, how often or whatever. We try to put these like rules, you can only eat this many times. No, whatever. Like we're actively teaching them to ignore what their body is telling them. And
Yeah.
we're reinforcing all this stuff at a very young age.
Yeah. And that's a great point with athletes too.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
rigidity that diet culture places on someone's eating habits or belief systems around food. Man, I see that all over the athletic world. And I just gave a presentation last week on where intuitive eating and sports nutrition collide, because
Hmm.
I see intuitive eating as being a very beneficial practice for anybody who eats. Intuitive
Right.
eating has something for you. And this is the reason we're talking about diet culture, because that's the whole idea behind intuitive eating, that we have to try and undo all of this damage that diet culture
Hmm.
does to humans. Now, in athletes, sports nutrition is often presented in this very rigid, sort of black and white. These are the recommendations. This is the exact amount of macros. And, like, I mean, coming
Hmm.
from a personal training world, it's the same
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like, this is how you eat for
Hmm.
leanness. This is how you eat for muscle gain. This is how you eat for whatever. And so a lot of times with athletes, they lose touch with listening to their bodies, appreciating food for actually tasting good, and just eating something because you enjoy it, not because it has a certain number of grams of protein, or it
Right.
has these
Right.
specific nutrients that we're trying to boost. Now, again, this doesn't mean that we disregard what we know about nutrition and fueling
Hmm.
a human body for top performance. It just means we have to find a way to sort of reconcile these two seemingly
Right.
competing notions, this rigidity of diet culture, that often conflates with sports nutrition guidance. So this
Hmm.
very like specific way of eating, and then also appreciate this emotional nurturing side of the food experience that people
Hmm.
need, and body trust and body appreciation. All of that is a huge piece that I think we miss a
Absolutely.
lot, especially in athletics and sports nutrition.
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of echoes was it last week's episode or 2 weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago? The major and the minor is that people get
Right.
caught up in like these details of like, well, how many grams of protein and how many
Mm-hmm.
ounces of water and how many minutes of exercise and how many grams of carbs, and they're worried about these things where there's not like, that's not inherently a bad thing, but a lot of times it's so far down the road that one, we don't need it now and it's not helpful. And two, we may never need it. Like I think a lot of us will never need to like have specific macro nutrient splits and gram, like that kind of stuff, because we get caught in like the what we're going to do, but we don't pay attention to like what's driving this. What are my motivators here? Why do I, why do I want to or not want to take care of myself? Why do I eat or not eat vegetables? Why do I exercise or not? Like, what is my internal experience that influences the choices I make around taking care of myself? And that's the place to start, because we can worry about like grams of carbs and protein and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
that's just details. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason that we're not eating things that are going to help us be a healthier person. There's a reason that we're not pursuing true health. And if we find out those motivators and those sort of drivers, then we can begin to like pick apart all this diet culture stuff, right? We can begin to see who we are, not in fitting into diet culture, but just as me as a person in this world who has as much worth or value as anybody else in this world, right? And what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that trip me up? What are the stumbling blocks and the hurdles that I have with my body and food and that kind of stuff? And begin to really do this deep work that really can overall my relationship with food, my relationship with exercise and my body, and my relationship with my place in this world. And then all that other shit, like, it's not as hard. It's not as hard
Mm-hmm.
to eat vegetables and go for a walk when you're like, I want to take care of this thing because this thing's awesome. And
Mm-hmm.
regardless of my size or my weight or whatever, size pants I'm wearing, whatever, like this is worth taking care of. It has things to offer. And that's the starting point,
I
and sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying I have an example, a client example that I
Yes.
wanted to share real quick that illustrates
Okay.
what you're saying, where people often letting go of diet culture and that diet mentality is really challenging for people to do,
Mm-hmm.
because if you hold on to any little hope that there is the next diet out there for you that's really going to
Yeah.
get you to that place you want to go. It's impossible to truly let that go and realize what Michael's talking about here, this deeper sense of purpose and empowerment and nurturing yourself, which is where these healthy changes start from. They don't start from diet culture is very external. It's all like, this is how you fit in. This is how you present yourself to the world. This is how you should look to achieve your goals and reach that
Right.
standard or expectation. Whereas what we're talking about is bringing it to an internal place where you are determining your own path and your own values and your own self-worth. So I have a client who comes from a football background, and he's been very open about the culture that he's been brought up in around football. And I've talked about this before, where football is very much like the bigger you are, that says a statement. So this is, we talk about diet culture breeding this desire for thinness. Well, it can also breed this desire for being big and being huge and having this imposing physical figure. And in football, that is, or, any kind of like power sport, or, where size matters with your body size, that's a big deal. So this client has really been kind of grappling with this as he gets older, and he's like, my body doesn't feel good at this like size. I need to find the right size for me. I need to understand that having a large size doesn't necessarily say anything about me as a person. So we've talked through that. We've done some work on that. And we've started talking about like portion sizes. How does it feel? And simply making observations. How does it feel to eat certain ways? I gave some guardrails on try to aim for these kinds of foods throughout the day and see how it feels. Let's make some observations. Over the holidays, he came back and was like, I think this is the first time I can really remember enjoying the food and not placing a judgment on myself, or not like beating myself up at the first of the year that, oh my God, I have to undo all this. Like he said, it's kind of nice not having that working on me all the time. And I'm like, yeah, it's very freeing, isn't it? And this is what we talk about with food freedom. All of a sudden you're like, whoa. So now I'm noticing he's writing down, kind of tracking his day and the things he's eating, because that's a piece of what we're working on. It's not for everybody, but for him, it's working. And I'm seeing a shift in the foods he's choosing. And when I kind of ask him about it, he's like, well, it feels really good to me. It's like, he says it's making a vote for a winning day, like a positive, he's a coach, and he, so he's like, this is kind of the way I see it now, is like, I want to take good care of my body, because this is what's important to me. It's not about size or portions, or this is how a football player eats, or any of that stuff anymore. So I think this is a great example of how bringing that intrinsic motivation to light and really getting in touch with what do you want as a person, and what standards do you hold yourself to in a deeper level, not like what society expects of you, is all of a sudden this very freeing place to be with food and diet culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point is, I think so often we really underestimate the value in just paying attention to ourselves. Like, sometimes when I pitch that to clients, it's like, hey, here's our work for the week. Like, we're just going to pay attention. We're going to see what you feel, see what you experience, see what you think when you're moving your body, when you're eating certain foods, when you're hungry. Like, let's just pay attention, because that's the only way we begin to understand what's going on, right? And diet culture tells you stop paying attention. Don't listen to anything. Just do it, right? Like, just do the thing you said you were going to do. Because if you don't, well, obviously you don't care about yourself, right? And now you're shame and guilt and that whole spiral. But the flip side of that is like, let's understand what's going on. Let's understand where you're starting from. Like, how do we change, messaging the internal messaging we have around food or exercise if we don't know what it is? How do we change our relationship with food if we don't understand it? Like, there is so much power. I mean, I really believe that like the first step towards true health, and not just a first step in a small way, but like really some of the most important work, and work that can set someone up for doing a lot of really good, healthy things for themselves, is to become aware of what's happening. Just become aware. Even if you don't do anything with it at first, just know what's going on. And as you begin to understand that, and you understand yourself better, and you begin to see like patterns and habits and triggers and all this stuff, like you understand your relationship with food and your body better. Holy crap. I mean, it can be such a game changer for everything just by paying attention, because most of us have lived our entire lives trying not to, right?
Yeah.
Trying not to pay attention, ignore it, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, just do it. Like all
Rub
these
some
messages
dirt
of
on
like,
it. Yeah.
yep, shut everything up and just do what you're supposed to do. And it's just completely backwards, because then we have no idea how we're actually relating to food. And the thing is, we all do. We all have a relationship with food. We all have a relationship with our body. We all have a relationship with exercise. And if we don't know what it is, we can't ever really, truly do anything about it.
Mhm.
So I have one more example about diet culture that I want to sneak in real quick. I know we're kind of going long already, aren't we? And then maybe let's get into like the examples there that we have written down, and then into some thoughts for people. Anyway, real quick. So I want to talk about before and after pictures. I'm not dogging on anybody that takes them. I'm not dogging on anybody that, trainer that uses them. I'm not saying that. Okay. What I am saying is that when you see a before and after picture or a progress picture, I want you to take note of what happens. Okay. So I just saw this maybe last week. There was someone who I'm friends with on Facebook who posted a progress picture, and she was pretty lean, right? Like had some visible abs, she, in the stereotypical sense of health, you would say like, wow, she looks great. So the context we get for this picture is just, this is where I'm at and I've worked hard for it. That's it. So we have this little bit of information, we have a visual, and I looked just now, there are 54 comments, okay, on this post. And all of them are like, wow, you look amazing. Wow, you've worked so hard. You must be so committed and dedicated. Holy cow, great job. And I know no one has ill intent like saying those things. They're like genuinely excited and happy for this person because they assume that they've done a good and worthy and noble thing. But here's the thing, like so often people get to a level of leanness by absolutely abusing their body and abusing their mental and emotional state to get to a place where they feel like, now I can display my body with confidence. Okay. And so often that process of getting to a certain level of leanness has only reinforced a terrible relationship with food, a terrible relationship with their body, like reinforced these deeply negative feelings and thoughts about who they are and their worth and value and their place in the world. And then you have everybody going like, good job, keep doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And so people are like, I should probably keep doing what I'm doing. And so I want you to just, I say this one to kind of point that out, but also two, I want you to look at when someone does post like a progress picture or before and after picture, that kind of thing, look at what people say about it. And look at how little information they have about what actually happened. And if they should be commenting on like that progress's worth or value. It's just, it's kind of an interesting little experiment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, think of things you can comment on to show your support or how much you value that person that doesn't have anything to do with their size. Because what often happens is when we then just pile on the praise for the weight loss, not only does it say, oh, because you lost weight, you're now worthy of all this praise, but it also says, oh, when you were heavier before, we weren't saying all this stuff about how great you look and how much we love you and how, so there's nothing wrong. Like you said, there's nothing wrong with taking pride and ownership over this is genuine hard work. And I have really, put in these very meaningful efforts to not only take care of my body, but also other aspects of my lives. I know lots of people that have quit drinking and that has led to weight loss. And I know people that are playing more with their kids because they found that they couldn't move around with their kids more. And so they really took earnest efforts to take care of their physical body, and it resulted in weight loss. I've known people that were just like eating out a ton and they're like, enough is enough. I need to, or they switch to
Mhm.
a vegetarian diet, whatever it is. Like there's all kinds of different paths that people take to get there. I think you're exactly right in saying if there's very little information and somebody just says, hey, look, I've gotten skinnier, you know, I've worked
Mhm.
really hard to do this. It doesn't necessarily mean that's praiseworthy or healthy for that person. So just take some pause and think about how can I respond to this in a way that doesn't,
Right.
if this person is engaging in really unhealthy behaviors to get here, if I knew that as a fact, how could I show my support and appreciation for this person and not precipitate that behavior? That's
Yeah.
the question to ask yourself.
Because I guarantee anybody listening, like if you're honest with you don't want to reinforce that, right?
Yeah.
Like none of us want to reinforce that. But
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, okay. So let's real quick, maybe go through these examples that we have listed. You mind if I just read through this real fast?
Sure.
Okay. So these are some examples of like how diet culture can crop up. So I'm just going to read through these real quickly. I don't know that we'll spend much time here, but as I read through these, I want you to just think about, do any of these like connect with me or kind of check me, right? Are any of these ones that you go like, ooh, yeah, I do that all the time. Okay. So this isn't about guilt. This isn't about shame. This isn't about you're doing things wrong. This is about awareness. Okay. And this is only about awareness. All right. So here we go. So examples of diet culture include labeling foods as good or bad, exercising to burn off a specific amount of calories or to earn a treat, limiting or avoiding entire food groups for being bad, like carbohydrates, dairy, sugar, feeling guilt or shame for eating, attempting to suppress your appetite with caffeine, nicotine, skinny teas, whatever, avoiding certain social situations to avoid eating, feeling unworthy or unattractive due to your body, weighing yourself and changing your behaviors based on the number on the scale. Ugh, that's probably all of us. Worshiping thinness and weight loss, what we were just talking about with the before and afters, progress pictures, assuming that your body is responsible for good and bad things happening, engaging in fat shaming behaviors or talk, and feeling envious of others for their weight or perceived self-control. Again,
Yeah.
like see that in just what we were talking about when people are like, wow, you must be so dedicated. Like you lost weight. So obviously you're operating at a higher level than all of us. You
Yes.
have more discipline. You have more self-control, clearly.
Yep. And that's a really important piece that I have in sort of our, like awareness messages that we're trying to help you all sort of develop in yourselves by listening to this. This is just one podcast. There is a lot of work to be done in all of our lives to really address and become aware of diet culture. And one of them that you just mentioned is something I have on my list too, assuming that your body is responsible for good or bad things happening. Whoa. Like what standard are you expecting to reach? What things do you expect to have in your life once you hit this very elusive body ideal? And let's just appreciate for a moment that the body ideal, whatever is the cool thing in the moment, changes from year to year, from trend to trend, even depending on where you live on this planet. The ideal is different. And so what are you picturing can happen in your life or will happen in your life once you reach that body ideal? And what says you cannot have those things or achieve those things in the body you're in right now?
Right.
Again, if you are completely ignoring your physical health or your emotional health and you see room for improvement in those areas, go for it. Please, like address those things and find your motivation, take action. We've talked about tons of different ways you can achieve that on this podcast. It may or may not result in weight loss. That's the key. It may or may not result in this ideal body that you have. You can do all the kinds of squats and deadlifts you want. You may not have the booty that you're seeing in that Instagram post that you think is just like the thing, right? So just be clear on why you're doing this. What intrinsic motivation is there for you to do these behaviors? And can I have those things that I want to achieve in the body I have now? I mean, that's a really powerful thing for you to explore with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So a couple other things about
do you want to do the backlash part?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about, we already mentioned a few of these things, but just how diets backfire in general, engaging in a diet.
Or even in just
one,
even living within the confines of diet culture, even if you're not actively dieting, quote unquote, but just what this construct kind of can impose on us.
good point, because you can be engaging in dieting mentality and behaviors and be a victim of diet culture messaging without actually identifying as being on a diet.
Yeah.
So very common.
It's a sneaky son of a bitch, isn't it?
I know.
Man, it's just everywhere.
I know. Just
one thing I want to say real quick, sorry, before we get into this, is that as you're, sorry, I had this thought and I lost it and then it came back. Big surprise.
How weird.
I know, right? But just as you're going through this stuff, if there are things that you like become aware of, like, oh, I'm doing that, like, this is really, really important. This isn't a time, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, but this isn't a moment to like feel bad or guilty or shameful about being a part of this. Okay. This is just about awareness. Like, I have been really aware of this for a while now. There are people who understand it way better than I ever will. And but still, like, a few years of really like diving into my awareness, and I still find myself all the time going like, oh, that's it too. And that's not a moment to go like, well, God, I guess I've been doing this wrong. I can't do this right. That's a moment to go like, oh, okay, now I understand it better. And I understand, I have another place now where this is cropping up its ugly head that I get to take care of. If that's ways I've been talking to my kids, and I got to go, okay, hey, I've said these things and I don't want to say them anymore because I realize I'm saying this and this isn't true. So let's correct this and help me say it differently. If it's how I see my own body, it's not a moment to feel bad or heap on those things that diet culture tells you need to be healthier, guilt and shame. It's a moment just to become aware and then go, okay, how do I begin to pull these threads out and become more aware of what's going on and live a healthier life? That's it. That's all we're doing with this. Okay. Sorry. I just need to say that.
So some of the backlash from dieting, of course, one of the common ones we see is the Last Supper effect. This often happens right before somebody engages in a dieting behavior. Maybe it happens every freaking weekend on the Sunday night before it's time to ratchet back down for the week ahead because I got to be good and eat like a good girl or a good boy for the week. Often that all or none mentality, that dichotomous thinking, leads us to overindulge or choose certain foods for certain reasons or overeat past our body's fullness cues, all of these things. So pay attention to that, because we see it time and time again with dieting behaviors and diet mentality. Social withdrawal, we kind of talked about this one, avoiding social situations that involve food, avoiding parties, vacations. And I encourage people to kind of explore, what is the story you tell yourself around food and beverage and your body when it comes to those celebratory or vacation kinds of things? Are you taking a quote break from being healthy? And so then we're going to indulge in all this other stuff. Well, why is that? What are the stories you tell yourself around that behavior and those foods and those, different situations? So that's another piece just to look at. And diet culture it precipitates all of this. It really just reinforces these kinds of behaviors and beliefs. We've talked about this in Metabolism Explained, that episode, I don't know, months ago.
I'll find it.
Sluggish metabolism. So every time you engage in dieting behavior where you are underfeeding your body, you're teaching your body to become very efficient at surviving in times of famine. Okay. Understand that this means your metabolism then sort of downregulates and is like, oh, we're not getting as much nutrition in, so we're going to hold on to everything we can. Now, it doesn't mean your metabolism is broken forever. It doesn't mean that, the whole idea I'm eating too little to lose weight, that is not a thing. Yeah, that's not a thing. What this is saying is when you're engaging in that yo-yo dieting kind of behavior, which again, this is why diet culture keeps selling and supports that multi-billion-dollar industry every year, because there's always that lingering hope that the next one is going to work for me, instead of like just really appreciating and celebrating the body you have and treating it well with good, healthy behaviors inside and out. That's what we're after here. The yo-yo dieting and this external sort of control of your body shape and size and weight is what really leads people down that path of the sluggish metabolism.
Yeah.
And then using caffeine, we talked about that in your ways that diet culture shows up. When I talk with people about caffeine intake throughout the day, I will have them make observations on how does that impact your appetite, your energy levels, and, you know, your workouts and all that stuff. Understand that diet culture is a stepping stone to disordered eating for many people. So we've talked about the difference between eating disorders and disordered eating before. So there's clinical diagnoses and manifestations that take place in eating disorders. But man, there are a lot of people that engage in disordered eating behaviors without being diagnosed with a clinical eating disorder. And understand that diet culture is like the springboard for disordered eating. So
because it is
just keep that in
eating.
mind. Yeah. And at its core, diet culture pulls you away from those internal cues, that innate hunger, satiety, body trust, and pushes you into this realm of this is how you should do it because this is what diet culture says you're supposed to do.
Yeah, because that's where the money is, right? Like that's
right.
We'll sell you the thing. You don't know what you're doing. You're not to be trusted with your own. So here, we've got something for you. Just buy this and you'll be
very
fine.
Seductive. Yeah.
It really is. It really is. You know, it's this like wonderful, empty promise, you know, like it paints a beautiful picture and it's just hollow and dead inside. But,
yeah. So I think, you know, just to kind of wrap this up, we talked about lots of different ways to sort of challenge diet culture messaging in your life. So the big ones we discussed were paying attention to how media influences your belief about yourself and how you view your body and how you view your own health and the behaviors you engage in. This means TV, social media. I forgot to mention the movie Encanto that just came out. It's a Disney Pixar movie. There's a character in there. I have not seen the movie yet. I really want to, but it's being celebrated for a lot of reasons. I think it's, you know, a very great representation of the Latinx culture. There's a lot of, you know, just cultural kind of references in there that are being celebrated. And one big one is that there's a character, Luisa, who's this, I think the sister of the main character. And she has all these big muscles and she's very strong and she sings about like her self-worth. And she just comes across in this very confident, you know, empowered sort of way. I think that is something to pay attention to as well. Not just the ways diet culture shows itself, like, oh, this skinny little character again, or, oh, there's another like weight loss reference, or, oh, there's another binge eating reference in this movie, but also like what are some things that you see that are actually combating diet culture and are very positive to show that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then pay attention to the story you tell yourself around eating certain foods in certain situations. And what are you telling yourself about what you will be or achieve once you reach that elusive body ideal? That's probably the big one. If you're struggling with, but I need to get down to this weight, or I need to look this way, why? Really dig into that. And again, that's something that, you know, you really could. Therapy and mental health and counseling is a huge part of this. And I think it can really help. But, you know, if you're not into that, start with just kind of journaling and writing, like put some of these questions down as prompts and dive in, see what comes out.
Yeah. In fact, you know, I've said this, I think twice in the last week, is that, you know, working with a dietitian or a trainer or, you know, whatever, this isn't therapy, but it's often therapeutic. And I think that, you know, there's certain lines that we need to, you know, adhere to and lanes we need to stay in. But at the same time, it's not at all uncommon for clients to really have these powerful, like, revelations about themselves and to begin to explore that in the work you're doing around, like, hey, let's eat more vegetables and let's, you know, hit the gym or, you know, ride your bike. And it's because when you start paying attention to the stories you're telling, like Erin said, you start to go, oh, this is what's driving this. This is what motivates this. And that comes from this. And like this process can be so intensely therapeutic when you're just like looking at like, trying to be healthier in some small ways and paying attention to what's going on. It's not easy, but it's not complex a lot of times. It's just like, hey, let's actually do the work of like paying attention to what am I telling myself and where is that coming from? And that alone can be life-changing, really life-changing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Diet culture, put it to rest.
Yeah. So next week, like we said, follow us on Instagram because we'll be doing some things on Instagram next week around just some ways to begin to understand how we maybe participate in diet culture in ways that we're not aware of, how it influences our life and our thinking and our behaviors that we're not aware of, that kind of stuff. So just be watching that space for some cool stuff that you can try and practice through the week.
Yeah.
Okay.
And meaning in the mundane.
Meaning in the mundane. You got one? You want me to go? You ready?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay, go.
Last night we went out to dinner with a couple of good friends of ours that it was her birthday, and we haven't been out to eat because Matt's on this like migraine diet thing.
Right.
I don't know if I've mentioned it, but it's quite speaking of diets, this is for a medical reason, but it's quite restrictive and it's just kind of ridiculous, like the different foods you have to avoid. So we haven't been eating out. So we went out to eat, and we just literally had one of those lingering dinners that's like over 2 hours long, where you just hang out and you visit and food and drink and whatever. And just, we had the best time. And of course, with the pandemic happening and just all of the things, it just has been a long time since we really felt like we had that freedom and that relaxed sort of atmosphere to just sit with our friends and have a great time. And so that was ours, just simple going out to dinner. But it was literally, I mean, it was only Monday and it was like the highlight of my week. I can tell you that right now.
That's awesome. I like that a whole lot. Mine's about going out to dinner too. So Kat and I went on a date on Friday. And we went to some friends of ours, got like, I don't know how they got them, but like these several like gift certificates to this really nice steakhouse. So they kind of doled out to some of their friends, and we got one. And so we went to this really nice steakhouse. And for me, it was just like the absolute joy and pleasure of eating a perfectly cooked piece of really high quality meat. Like just enjoying that steak, as much as I could enjoy it, right? Like when you get a really nice steak cooked just right, there's not much better than that. So for me, it was just me internally
the food experience.
16 ounces of meat, just making sounds. Kathleen was just like, you are really liking that steak. I was like, yeah. And I'm not making half the sounds I want to.
Oh my gosh.
But it was just the joy of food and the joy of eating it because it's delicious and it's a fun experience and nothing else, not because it's right or wrong or good or bad. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Please share. Yep. Give us a rating, give us a review, subscribe to the podcast, share with friends. Like, we think just that more important and more valuable stuff is coming. So bring people on board. We'd appreciate that.
Yep. Thank you.